I believe that we did the trial period a year ago for hamlets, and that obviously any complaints would be sent to bylaw. Mr. Enslin, your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Yeah, we haven't received any formal complaints with regards to chickens in the rear yard. We have had inquiries about the chickens, but no formal complaints to say they smell or noisy or anything. Just more or less concerned and asking for information on, what could we expect if we did see chickens in our backyard. So just some inquiries, no formal complaints.
But my question is, how many such chicken operations are there in the hamlet? Maybe there isn't any. Yeah,
through you, Mr. Chair. There's no registration or anything. We wouldn't have a clue on how many there were. If there were lots and we did receive complaints, then we would certainly have a number, but there may have been several out there that we just never heard about, or there may be none.
Thank you. Anything further on this matter? Councillor Height.
Mayor Luke, are you entertaining motions to allow chickens in the urban areas of Norfolk County?
I will entertain a motion on anything on this subject.
Okay, well, I will move that exact motion that we allow chickens in the urban areas of Norfolk County. It worked in the hamlets. It can work here now.
Okay, just a moment. I wasn't aware of that. Mr. Baird, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Height, it's come to my attention that staff are bringing a report back to Council September 25th just on this topic, and perhaps that might be the opportunity to have additional information before you, and whether you choose at that point to put forward your motion, it may be a better time for discussion when you've got more information.
Sounds good. I appreciate that.
Could you wait for 4 weeks and
we'll
have the staff report? Thank you. Councillor Black?
Well, it's a topic that I think the public should be aware of, and I know the reference was made to Simcoe. But if council is going to do it, should be all urban areas in Norfolk County. Would there be some way staff would publicize this? Because I am sure once people are aware, they will be voicing their concerns. I don't know, through you to Andy, is there a way that we would be actually publicizing the fact that this report is coming and that there may be an opportunity to open this up and provide the ability to have chickens in the urban areas?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd suggest that if we are going to do a large change of that nature, that we would have to describe it in the zoning bylaw, probably. So that is a public hearing process. I think what's coming forward in September 25th is an initial phase for council's consideration in response to the pilot program that's run before. So certainly there is nothing preventing the public from submitting letters or comment on it, but there would be, if council decided to go down that road, there would be another big process for public input as well as for appeal of any change to the zoning.
I think that is the answer. Then if the report comes and council does decide to do something, then we would have to amend the bylaw, which would trigger a public meeting with notice, and then the council chambers will be filled.
Councillor Oliver?
Mr. Mayor, the only other thing I think all of my colleagues and I are thinking, if we are going to get a staff report, we may allow chickens, but we don't want to allow lame ducks.
Oh boy, oh boy. Okay, we will wait then, without any further direction from the floor, until September the 25th, Andrew, is when the staff report is coming on this topic, and it will be discussed that evening by council. Where we go from there, we will wait and see. Council okay with that? Thank you, gentlemen. I would like at this time to go to our public meeting. It is 4 o'clock, just after 4. I will now officially open the public meetings. They are held under the Planning Act and the Municipal Act. I advise those in attendance that the local planning tribunal has the power under the Planning Act to dismiss an appeal to either a zoning bylaw and/or the official plan amendment. If the appellant does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or does not make written submissions to Norfolk County Council before the zoning bylaw is passed and/or the official plan amendment is adopted. Would you please turn to page 53 of your agenda? We will begin with staff report DCS 18-67. An application has been received to establish a temporary use bylaw permitting a garden suite for a period of 5 years on the subject lands. Angela McComb has put forth this application that affects the lands described as 145 Teeter Street. You can get wired up, Alicia. We're not in any big panic. Alicia Call is certainly here, and I will turn things over to her when she is ready to make her presentation of her staff report.
This is an application to permit a garden suite on the subject lands for a period of 5 years. The lands are 1 acre in size and front onto Teeter Street in the hamlet of Teeterville, and the property contains a dwelling and a detached garage. The lands are designated hamlet and zoned hamlet residential, and no public input was received for this application. Staff are satisfied that a legitimate and justified need exists for the garden suite. It is an appropriate secondary use on the property and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and it represents good planning. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council to Alicia? Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Underneath development engineering, I see that they're asking for a lot grading plan to be able to get the building permit. Obviously, that's fairly flat land. Is this something new? I haven't seen that before. Or are we asking everyone to jump through that hoop?
Through the mayor, lot grading plans are generally always required in hamlets and urban areas. They're often waived in agricultural areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions to our planner? Is the applicant, is Angela here this evening? Are you with an agent or are you on your own here? That's good. That's fine. So I'm going to continue and say, if there's anyone in attendance this evening that is in favor of this application, I would ask them to come forward, and certainly we would start with the applicant. Angela, do you wish to speak at this time? You're okay? Maybe a question or two later? Thank you. Is there anyone else in attendance this evening that's here to speak in favor of this application? You may come forward. Seeing none, I'll ask if there's anyone in attendance this evening that is here to speak in opposition or in general to this application. If you're here, please come forward. Hearing none, is there anything further from council? I will need a mover and seconder to close this public meeting. Councillor Height has moved. Councillor Brunton has seconded that we close this public meeting. Those in favor? That is carried. We have staff's recommendation on page 58 of your agenda at the back of the report. What is your wishes? Councillor Columbus?
Mr. Mayor, I move the recommendation as printed.
Moved for approval. Seconder, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Columbus has moved. Councillor Oliver has seconded that the application by Angela McComb at 145 Teeter Street in Teeterville. This affects the lands of Lot 8, Block 2 of Plan 47B in the former township of Wyndham. This is for Norfolk County to amend our Norfolk County zoning bylaw 1Z 2014. The file number is printed there, that it be approved for reasons as set out in report number DCS 1867. And certainly there has been no public input being received on this application, and therefore it can't be considered as part of our decision. Discussion on this motion for approval. I see none. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Angela, for being here. Gentlemen, I'm on page 65. We have staff report DCS 68. This is an application that has been received to establish a temporary use bylaw on the subject lands to permit a garden suite for a period of 5 years. Jeffrey Bramley, on behalf of Warren and Marissa Bramley, have put forth this application that affects the lands described as 274 Concession 7 of Townsend. I will now open this meeting on 18-68. Alicia, again, you're here. I would like you to present your report, please.
This is an application to permit a garden suite on the property for a period of 5 years. The subject lands are part of an 18-acre farm in front onto Concession 7 Townsend. The lands are designated and zoned agricultural, and no public input was received for this application. Staff are satisfied that a legitimate and justified need exists for the garden suite. This is an appropriate secondary use on the property and compatible with surrounding development. This application represents good planning. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved.
Thank you very much. I'll ask first if there are questions from this council first. None at this time. I will ask if the applicants, Warren and Marissa Bramley, are here, or the agent, Jeffrey Bramley, if you're in attendance. You're here. I'll get to you in a moment. Matter of fact, I'll get to you right now. I'm asking if there's anyone in attendance at this meeting who wishes to speak in favor of the application, and certainly the agent or applicant can speak first if they wish to at this time. Mr. Bramley? Nothing at this time? Here to take care of your parents? Very good, thank you. Maybe a question later, we shall see. Is there anyone else in attendance this evening that wishes to speak in favor of this application? You may do so now. Is there anyone in attendance this evening that wishes to speak in opposition or in general to this application? This is the time to come forward. Anything further from council members? I'll need a motion to close this public meeting. Sonnenberg and Geisens have moved and seconded that we now close the public meeting. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Staff's recommendation is on page 70 of your agenda. What's your wish? Councillor Black, please.
The recommendation in the report.
For approval. I'll need a seconder. Councillor Brunton, please. Black and Brunton have moved and seconded the application of Jeffrey Bramley of Concession 7 in Townsend, of Waterford, affects the lands, part lot 4 and 5, Concession 7 in Norfolk County. This is to amend the Norfolk County zoning bylaw 1Z 2014. The file number is printed there, gentlemen, that it is recommended for approval for reasons as we set out in Report DCS 1868. There has been no public input been received for this application, therefore will not be considered as part of our decision. Discussion. Those in favor? That is carried. This application is approved. Thank you, Mr. Bramley. I am now going to page 77. Yes.
On the subject of garden suites, I'm aware of a situation in my area where there's a lot of improvements going on to an accessory building, and rumors have it that somebody might be moving into that building. Do we allow garden suites in any permanent structure, or must they be in a mobile type home?
Through the mayor, according to the official plan, they have to be able to be removed once the bylaw expires, so we don't permit them in permanent structures.
Thank you. Page 77, please. DCS 1869. An application has been received to amend the official plan to permit residential uses along the frontage of Robinson Street. That's here in Simcoe, and to amend the zoning of the subject lands to permit the first floor of this building to be above the established grade of the street and to permit part of the frontage of the first floor to be used as residential use, or a combination of residential and retail, office, or service uses, Vanderland CS Limited and Agent G. Douglas Valley Limited have put forth the applications affecting the lands described as 110 Robinson Street. I now open this meeting on DCS 1869. Alicia Call again is here and will present her report to us at this time. Alicia, thank you.
The subject lands are located at the southwest corner of Robinson Street and Talbot Street South in Simcoe. The lands contain a vacant building, and they are designated Central Business District and Zoned Central Business District with a special provision. No public input was received for this application. This application represents an opportunity to assist with downtown revitalization in Simcoe. This neighborhood is mixed commercial and residential in nature, and the proposed development is compatible with the area. This application represents good planning. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved.
Thank you, Alicia. Questions of council to our planner. Councilor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke, through you to Alicia. Alicia, I'm a little bit confused as to what's going to happen with the entire building. Could you explain that to me? Like, I understand what the first floor is somewhat raised in the building, but what's the overall use?
Through the mayor, they are proposing to put commercial uses along the frontage on Talbot Street, but then along Robinson Street, it would be residential, so the whole back of the building and the second story.
Residential.
Yes,
So-
just with commercial on the frontage on Talbot Street.
So Talbot you consider as the front of the building?
It technically is the front, but the interpretation for corner lots like this in CBD is that the frontage of the buildings along any street has to be residential, but technically the front yard is Talbot Street.
Really?
Yeah. Or it
Okay.
has to be commercial, sorry, but yes, that'd be the frontage.
And how many units residential altogether?
I don't think that's confirmed yet, but I know John Valley does have a presentation, so he may be able to answer that.
Thank you.
I would think, Alicia, normally on a corner lot where the front is the smallest, i.e. Talbot, that's the front, regardless of the use. The second question I have on this is, the reason Robinson Street for residential rather than Talbot, is that because of the dimensions of the building or the depth? Okay. I see some nodding over there. I can hear some nodding over there. Thank you for those two questions. I have other questions. Councilor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize to Alicia for having my back to her, but it's a quick question, and it relates to the part of the recommendation regarding relief from the first floor elevation of the building relative to grade. I didn't see it in the report unless I missed it. Is there much of a difference? I know we can visualize the front of the building. Is it going to be a big issue for us to grant that kind of relief, or will Mr. Valley in his presentation address how they would handle the increase in elevation from grade to the first floor?
Through the mayor, so the building currently, I think it's maybe 2 or 3 steps up to the building. I think the plan may be to build a new building on the property anyways, and if it was a new building, it would have to be accessible as per the AODA Compliance Act. So it should be possible for us to address that.
Thank you very much, Councilor Oliver. Any other questions from Councilor at this time? Okay, not at this moment. I see the applicants, Vanderland CS Limited and Mr. Valley is in attendance. I'm going to ask those that are in attendance that wish to speak in support of this application will do so at this time, and certainly we always allow the agent or the applicant to come forward first. Mr. Valley, please.
There we go. That's a little better. Thank you very much, Your Worship and members of council. We're very pleased to be here, and some of the questions that were asked around, we're going to address those tonight. So just a quick introduction. I think everyone in the room knows me around the council table. I'm John Valley. I'm president of G. Douglas Valley Limited. Melissa Stickle, who's our design architect for this project, wasn't able to be here tonight, but hopefully I can answer any questions architecturally that you may have. And Ken and Kevin Vanderland are in the gallery with me tonight. They are the owner and applicant for this undertaking. So just a quick presentation. We're going to talk to you a little about who we are, the existing building, what we propose to do there, the zoning amendment we need, what we have to do between tonight and and the actual occupying the building. And of course, we got lots of time for you guys to ask us questions. So just a quick blurb about our company, what some of you on council may not realize. We're obviously here in Simcoe, Norfolk staff and Norfolk oriented, but we always come here asking you for things relating to our planning business and to our engineering business with subdivisions and so on, but we're bringing you tonight what we consider to be one of our architectural projects. We have a couple of architects and a team to support them within our office. You can see the team across the bottom of the page there. We just want to emphasize to you that we're not just an engineering practice, but we have that architectural capability as well, along with all these other wonderful things that we do. Our client here, the Vanderlands, Vanderland CS Limited, is a group that approached us when they first got interest in this building. Ken and Kevin are both here tonight in the gallery again. They're from Dundas. They've owned this building for about 2 years now, and you may have seen some work going on the inside of the building, and they're the ones who have been active in that regard. They are the applicants tonight, and their business is financing and credit investment. And that's what they do. That's their background. They're business people who are looking to make a substantial investment here in Simcoe. The existing building is what it is, and I think I'm assuming that everyone around the council table is familiar with this building. It's right across the street from my office. We're guessing it's about 1890s. And I get that only because that's the date of our building. And the architecture between the two buildings is very similar. Unfortunately, this one has been let go, where the building we occupy has been restored to its former glory. This one has not. Many of you may remember it as the Village Pump in years gone by. I'm seeing a few smiles around the council table, so lots of good times there. More recently, the Malibu Club. It's had a long history of bars and hotels and sordid past. It's vacant, and it's in really bad condition. The photographs on the screen sort of indicate the current inside state of repair. It's basically an urban eyesore that we need to get rid of in the downtown core. Our clients were originally buying the building with the idea of fixing it up and so on, but I don't think that's going to be possible. We're going to have to replace it. So what do we want to do with the building? Well, we have this photograph. This is the building back from, I don't know the year, but there's no cars here. It's horse and buggy days. You notice the big, beautiful trees outside. This is the building in her former glory, and this is what we want to achieve again with the building. So although they could come in and put a brand new, beautiful glass structure up, they don't want to do that. Their intention is to recreate this building. To match the original. So we're documenting the building. We're hoping to save pieces, architectural pieces out of the building to recreate this in the original fantastic history. I'm just personally guessing it's 1980s. I could be off a bit there, but it's certainly an older building that needs some recognition. It was known as the Queen's Hotel. That's what it, maybe it was something before that even, I don't know, but that's the history we have. Horse and buggy days. And I want council to just take quick note, if I can find the laser button here without my glasses, on this little thing. There's what we call a portico that sticks out in front of the building. So there's a couple of columns here, and there's this roof. You can see some people standing up on the top. This portico is a key design feature of the building. The problem is that when this building was built, I don't think there were such thing as road allowances in those days. You just sort of built your building, and the county came along, or whoever came along later, and created a street. In order to reconstruct that, we would actually be out onto county property, which poses all kinds of challenges for us. We've talked to the staff about the idea of getting an easement out onto the street. That's problematic. But we'd like to sort of kick that football around a little bit and see if there's any way that we could do that, because we'd really love to incorporate this original heritage architecture back into a new rebuild. And I really think that's something that's worth some effort and discussion. That's not a proposal before you tonight, but if council has some thoughts on that, whether they think that's a good idea or a bad idea, we'd love to hear it. So what are we proposing? This is the building that we're currently is on the design books at the office. You can see we're showing that same portico out onto Robinson Street. It's got the same layout. It's got the same detailing in the windows, the same brick that we understand is under those 14 layers of paint. And this is the vision. Again, the client really wants to restore this building so that it's a replica of the original. the same brick, same detailing that we would do if we spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to try to restore it. It's been determined we're better just to bulldoze it and replicate it because it's just too far gone. Again, I would just want to throw that out to council, this interesting portico feature that would now be on your Robinson Street and how we could maybe address that through some form of easement. So this is a floor plan. This will address Councillor Brunton's questions. So this is the main floor. Across the bottom is Talbot Street, and up the side here is Robinson. This green area is proposed to be office space, which would be used by my clients. They would have their own personal office in the building in that location. So they would front out onto Talbot Street. Then there's a yellow corridor here. There's an entrance. This is where the portico would go. An entrance here, a set of stairs to get up to the second floor. And there's an apartment unit there for 1, 2, and 3 on the main floor. And there'd also be a vestibule and staircase here because we need 2 methods of exit from the second floor. Then moving up to the second floor, again, you've got this stairwell here that will come up to the purple corridor going the full length of the building, and the exiting method back here and the right adjacent to Peter Black's building, actually. And then you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units here. The larger unit is about just a little over 1,000 square feet, and the smallest unit is about 500 square feet. So we're looking at these as small units that would be targeted towards young professionals working in the downtown core. Got about 5 of these guys in my office that would probably be really interested in something like this, to live and work right in the downtown core of Simcoe. This is the concept that we have. You can be assured that we're talking about a quality development because the clients who are going to build this and rent these units out are actually going to have their office on the main floor, so the last thing they want is rough tenants, rough neighborhood. They're more of an upscale, professional style of building. So why are we here tonight? Well, there's this zoning issue that we have to address, and this is a quote right out of your existing zoning bylaw, and it says in the CBD zone, Central Business District, that's the zoning we're at, the location of and use of the first story. And it says the first story of any dwelling units shall be level with the established grade of the street. So that's a little problematic for us. And the frontage of the first story shall be dedicated to retail or office. And you heard the planner talk about that a little bit. So we're not exactly clear what it means to be level with the grade of the street, and we had some discussions with Fritz Enslin over in the building department, and the 2 of us, I said, well, does it mean this or does it mean that? And we weren't sure, so we thought, let's just bring an amendment and clean this up and get rid of that requirement. So, for example, is level with the street, is that the sidewalk elevation? Is that the ground beside the building where you would enter? Is it the center line of the road? What are we talking about? And why are we restricted to that? This building has a grade difference around it where the back of the building in the southwest corner is almost a meter higher than the sidewalk. So clearly we do not want those units in the back to be below grade. We want them to be flush with the existing grade so that we can have wheelchair accessibility and all those things. So we need to be able to raise the floor in the building so that it sits above the street level to provide barrier-free accessibility and just provide a better design. So we've asked to have that requirement for this first level at the grade of the street. We've asked just to get rid of that, and planning staff agrees with that idea. Then there's this frontage thing, and we talked about that, again, with Fritz Enslin. As Councillor Brunner pointed out, the frontage, when you define the frontage, it's the narrow side of the lot, which would mean Talbot Street. But in this case, does it mean Talbot Street or does it mean Robinson, because it's not the setback, it's the front? It just wasn't clear. So again, we said, let's just clean this up with the zoning bylaw to make sure we know exactly what we're doing, and we can move forward with a proper application. So the official plan, in your official plan, and this is taken right out of your staff's recommendation, it says your existing policy is that the county will encourage private sector to increase the amount of density and residential uses in and around the downtown area by supporting appropriate residential development and redevelopment. So this is exactly what we're doing here. Your official plan already talks to this. You want this kind of development. Your official plan says you should encourage it. It says the county will encourage it. And this is what we're bringing forth to you tonight. So we really believe this complies with your zoning or your official plan documents and should be a strong support, we're hoping, for this application. Your staff also supports this. We haven't had any objections. We think this is a great thing for the neighborhood to get rid of a derelict building and replace it with a brand-new, large investment opportunity for Norfolk County. And it's obviously a chance to support some revitalization in downtown Simcoe, which is desperately needed. So where from here? What we're looking at tonight, here we are, phase 1, zoning, official plan, get those things all tidied up so that we can move forward with an application. Then we would go to phase 2. We're about ready to bring a demolition application into your building department to get approval to demolish the building. Then, of course, then we go through all the approvals of site plan approval, building permits, all those things, get that all ready. We get into construction, tendering, construction, occupancy permits, and so on before we get to a complete project. So we're way up here at phase 1 of zoning, looking for you to support us and to get this undertaking underway. So our request for tonight, please approve the zoning bylaw that's there and the official plan before you. Allow us to have residential units on Robinson Street, get rid of that confusion in the bylaw. Allow us to raise the floor up above the street level so we can, it sounds weird to raise the floor level so you can have barrier-free design, but that's what's needed here. And let us move forward in the design. And then we'd also appreciate any comments the council has about this idea of this portico and getting some kind of easement or something from the county to allow us to restore that portico and bring back that heritage thing in the building. We'd really like to do that. I know it's not normal for the county to do that kind of thing, but if council has any thoughts, we'd like to hear those tonight. So with that, I'll close off and ask if there's any questions.
Mr. Valley, I'll open for questions. Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Yes, thanks, John, for your presentation. Just very quickly, you went through it quick there, but there's 5 units on the top floor. And no residential on the main floor, or is there some residential?
No, there are 3 residential units on the main floor and 5 up top.
Okay.
That's preliminary plans. It could change a bit, but that's the thinking right now.
Okay, and so a total of 8.
Yes.
And there CBD, no parking, I take?
No parking is required in the CBD zone.
Okay. I'll save my comments for after.
Okay.
Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, John, for the presentation. I think it's a really exciting project. My question sort of follows from Councillor Brunton's. The 8 units, would they be condominium units or would they be apartment rental units, or has that been decided yet by your clients?
The vision right now is that they would be apartment rental units. Of course, that could change. We'd need to bring a condominium application before you to achieve that, but the thinking now is a rental.
Further questions for Mr. Valley? I just have one. Certainly, we have some maps here, but from your diagrams, roughly is the square footage of the commercial component, if I can call it that. Do you have that roughly?
I do, if I can read it without my glasses. Do you know how big your commercial spot is?
Just curious. 800 square feet?
I would think it's, no, I think it's probably more like 1,500 square
Oh, my
feet,
goodness.
I'm guessing. Yeah.
Thank you. That's fine. I just wanted a rough idea. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Valley? Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe he'll have a chance to get input from us later, but the idea of the portico facing out onto Robinson, I think is pretty interesting and exciting. If you weren't ultimately able to get permission to bring those columns down, could you support that upper deck, if you like, just through engineered such that it wouldn't actually have a footprint touching the ground, but it would be over top, or does it need to be supported by columns from an engineering perspective?
The portico could be cantilevered out over the sidewalk through engineering in the building. That could be done. The existing building does sit back a little bit from the property line, I think a couple of feet, and that's about where the new building would go as well. So we do have some room on our own property before we hit the property line. I would expect that staff would say, well, if you're going to project out over top of our sidewalk, the county sidewalk, we would still need some form of encroachment because we're hanging over. maybe it would be more acceptable, I don't, but that could be done. It wouldn't be in keeping with the original heritage, obviously, which is what we're trying to achieve.
Councillor Brunton?
Mayor Luke, just for allowing me to ask another question there. John, is the portico, you call it,
Yes,
is it simply a case of encroachment?
yes,
That's it?
yes.
Okay, and, all right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Valley? Not at this time. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Valley. Is there anyone else in attendance tonight that would like to speak in favor of this application? Mr. Santos, welcome, and you have the floor, sir.
Mr. Worship, good afternoon. Council, good afternoon, and to staff and to the people in the audience. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Corrado, who is the neighbor to the south of this building. He's had numerous conversations with both owners. They've been compliant and working well with Mr. Corrado, so they are being thanked by Mr. Corrado here in front of Council, Mr. Mayor, on the point that not only are they willing to work with Council, but also willing to work with the neighborhood. So Mr. Corrado, over the last 46 years, has had numerous issues that have come out of these hotels that have been there over these years, and unfortunately has had more headaches than anything else. So at this point in time, he just wants to make it very clear. His English is very limited, so he asked me to do this so-called talk to let everyone know that he's not only on side, but he supports and he's impressed with these two individuals that have actually made the effort to speak with him and deal with numerous issues with reference to sewer and so on and so forth. So thank you, Your Worship and Council.
Questions for Mr. Santos? George, certainly we appreciate Mr. Corrado's raising the concerns and his willingness to speak to the owners and his comments this evening.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in attendance this afternoon who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone in attendance this evening that wishes to speak in opposition or in general to this application? Anything further from council members? I will ask then for a motion to close the public meeting. Councillor Wells has moved. Councillor Oliver has seconded that we now close the public meeting. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We have a staff recommendation on page 84 of your agenda. Councillor Brunton, your recommendations?
I'll approve the recommendation, if I may speak to it, Your Worship.
When I get a seconder, you may. I have a mover, I now have a seconder. I'm going to read it too, Councillor Brunton.
Okay.
You may stay standing if you like, but I do have to read the motion. I'll be quick. Brunton has moved, Sonnenberg has seconded that the application of Vanderland CS Limited in Dundas, Ontario. This affects the lands described as Lot 4, part of Lot 4, and it's Lot 5, Block 92, Plan 182 in the urban area of Simcoe of Norfolk County to amend the Norfolk County official plan in the zoning bylaw 1Z 2014. The file numbers are listed. This is recommended for approval for reasons set out in the report number 1869, and that public input has been received for this application and therefore will be considered as part of this decision. Councillor Brunton, discussion to that motion, please.
Well, Your Worship, I've taken a close look at this, and first of all, to address Mr. Santos there, I think this type of development will certainly address the concerns that have happened there in the past. I'm quite familiar with that place, and I must say I come out the front door one time. I don't recall any steps when I came out. But I can tell you this, I really think that if we've made any indication that encroachments aren't favorable in this community, we're wrong. Many of our businesses in the downtown encroach on their own allowance. Many of them. They've improved their storefronts. So I think it, to me, is most important to provide that look on that facility. I think it's going to be a great attribute to the town, and Mr. Valley indicated it, that It's part of what we need in our downtown, Your Worship. So I for one, am supporting this, and I hope that it goes ahead just like the photograph shows, because I think it's going to be a great attribute to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with my colleagues' comments. I guess I would like to direct a question to staff,
You can.
if possible.
Yes.
Whether it would be helpful to streamline this process if council were to include as an amendment to the motion a permission for an encroachment vis-a-vis the portico that has been described to us. That I hope is council's position. Would it make staff's life easier for us to give that approval now so that it can be incorporated into their design?
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, the encroachment process is one where we do a lot of consultation with other departments, and we present a separate staff report here, and there's also an application process where we get some of those things. So there's AODA issues with the sidewalk, there's liability that we incur, we need insurance from the person, so just skip that and go to it right now would be a little bit premature. But if you wish to waive the fee for the encroachment application, that would get the process going, and that's something that council could do and get staff immediately started on the encroachment application.
I'll get back to you 1 second while you ponder that. Shannon, did you wish to speak to this, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the encroachment, as Andy had noted, it is a separate process that's not normally addressed through the planning component. We would also look at some of these technical issues through the site plan process as well, where other departments and agencies would be circulated for their commentary. So it is something that is a little bit bigger scope than just looking at the portico at this stage.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Back
Thank
to
you.
you, Mr. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering, and I appreciate what the clerk has said, I'm wondering if an approval in principle as an amendment would in no way interfere with the necessary process, but would show to the developers and to staff that council is supportive of this unique feature of the building. Would there be anything negative about an approval in principle amendment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually that would be probably quite helpful because the policy is very clear that we aren't to use any, we are not to encourage any new encroachments for any developments. So even if you waive the fee without a motion like that, and if we were given to do a report, we would have to recommend refusal. So if council supports in principle, then we can do a report for council to consider that allows us to recommend approval.
I'll agree to that and add it to the recommendation.
Mr. Sonnenberg, you're okay with that? So, well, I could write that in principle. Do you want to add it to that, or? Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. If I let you do it, rather than myself, it'll be done right. Certainly.
The encroachment, I'll use the word policy that we have, is that something our council in the past dealt with? Because I know we've all had all kinds of encroachments, but is that a policy that was developed by council some time ago?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be a 2008 policy, and it's likely, it is due for review early in the next term of council.
Okay, these are the kind of things that we need to, I guess, review, because if we want to improve the downtown, that's what we have to do. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. The motion, as you see it on page 84, is what I have read. And added to that will be the words, "and that council direct staff to prepare an encroachment report with the intent that council support the portico in principle." You okay with that? Mr. Sonnenberg. Any discussion now with that addition to the motion? I hear none. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, I am now on page 97 of our agenda. This is Staff Report 1878. An application has been received to rezone the subject lands from agriculture zone to hamlet residential to facilitate the future severance of 2 hamlet building lots in Silver Hill. Ross and Rob Jameson have put forth the application affecting the lands described as 1695 Forestry Farm Road. I opened the meeting on DCS 1878. I saw that Stephen Collier, our planner, is here. He is in attendance and he is ready to give us his report. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, members of the public. This is a rezoning application to rezone 2 acres of land in the hamlet of Silver Hill from agricultural to hamlet residential. The lands are currently vacant and surrounded by residential uses to the north, east, and south. The applicant intends to sever 2 building lots, each 1 acre in size, from this rezoned parcel of land. This application is consistent with the goals in the provincial policy statement and the Norfolk County official plan to support infill in settlement areas, and planning staff believe that this application represents good planning. Staff support this application and recommend that it be approved.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Are there any questions to our planner at this point? Not at this time. Are the applicants Ross and Rob Jameson in attendance this evening? Yes, sir. I'll proceed and ask if there's anyone in attendance who wishes to speak in favor of this application, may do so at this microphone at this time. And Mr. Jameson, if you wish to speak at this time, you get first. You're okay there? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in attendance who wishes to speak in favor of this application? This is the time. Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak in opposition or in general to this application? Anything else from council? Mover and seconder to close. Wells has moved. Councillor Height seconded that we now close this public meeting. Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Page 102 is staff recommendation. Councillor Height?
Move the recommendation.
Move for approval. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Geisens, thank you. Height and Geisens have moved and seconded the application of Ross Lee and Rob Jameson. 1355, concession 12 of RR1 Langton. This affects the lands described as Part Lot 24, concession 10, Geographic Township of North Walsingham, Norfolk County, to amend the Norfolk County zoning bylaw 1Z 2014. The file number is printed in front of you. It's recommended for approval for reasons as set out in DCS 1878. Discussion on this motion for approval. Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. I'm up now to page 108. This is staff report DCS 18-79. An application has been received to amend the official plan to permit 2 accessory residential dwelling units per lot and to rezone the subject lands to permit the construction of a second unit accessory to each semi-detached unit on the properties. Relief from the zoning bylaw is required to permit 2 required parking spaces within the front yard, where a maximum of 1 required space is permitted to permit less than the 50% landscaped area in the front yard, and to permit 2 second units per lot where 1 is permitted. Sunfield Homes of Simcoe Limited and Agent Civic Planning Solutions have put forth the applications affecting the lands described as 66-76 Evergreen Hill Road. I will now open this meeting on Report 18-79. Alicia Cole is back in the chair, and we are ready for your report. Thank you.
This is an application affecting 2 properties in Simcoe to permit 2 accessory dwelling units per lot and requesting relief from the 50% minimum landscape provision for front yards and from the maximum 1 required parking space in the front yards. The subject lands front onto Evergreen Hill Road and are made up of 2 lots, each with a semi-detached dwelling under construction. The lands are designated urban residential and zone neighborhood commercial. 2 letters of concern have been received from neighbors. One was in reference to drainage, which I think council may have been copied on. It's also included with my report. So that issue it is being taken care of by a temporary French drain in the near future, if it hasn't been done already. The other concern was with regard to traffic, and that was received and should have been circulated to you by Andy. This neighborhood is denser than many areas in Simcoe, making the proposed development consistent with the character of the area. The accessory residential units will not be visible from the road, and the units cannot be severed due to the way that they've been constructed, and this makes it likely that they will be used for rental in the long term, which is something that is desperately needed in Norfolk County. Staff support the subject applications and recommend that they be approved.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I will ask if there are questions. Council Columbus and then Black, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at page 109 of our agenda. It's page 2 of 20 of the report. And under the building and bylaw section, it says in the last sentence, the existing dividing wall, the party wall, has not been constructed as a firewall. Is that an issue with respect to the Ontario Building Code? And if it is, how will it be remedied?
Through the mayor, the issue is that the lot can't be severed. So a lot of times when people build semis, they will sever them right down that center wall and split them into 2 lots. But it has to be constructed in such a way that that can be done. And since that hasn't been done, these lots cannot be severed. But the owner is aware of that.
Councilor Black.
Mayor Luke, thank you. Through you to staff. Alicia, just wondering, you said that this property was in character with the surrounding properties, and I can't see how it can be when you have condominium developments, upscale condominium developments behind, and right adjacent to it, single-family residence across the road, single-family residence, large homes, and then we're going to plunk this, originally it was supposed to be a commercial site only to service that new subdivision, Harvest Glen. They came in with an amendment to have 2 semi-detached homes. I guess that was kind of the foot into the door, but now they're asking to add 2 more additional units. And the way I look at the building code, which I've been told, there's going to be 8 units here, 8 units, 8 units, and each unit will have 2 bedrooms or 1 bedroom in each one.
Through the mayor, I don't have those details.
Okay, let's say there's 2 bedrooms in each one. That's 16 bedrooms. The building code says that there can be 2 people per bedroom. That's 32 people that could potentially live in this property. Maybe the 32 people won't live there, but the potential is. Where are they going to park all their cars? And their friends? And their snowmobiles, and their recreational vehicles.
He's not upset at you, he's just getting excited.
No.
He's asking a good question, he's just being a little dramatic, which is okay. But anyhow, you want to answer that, please?
Through the mayor, there hasn't been any requested relief for parking. So aside from the location, they will have all the required parking as per the zoning bylaw, the number of spaces. Accessory residential dwelling units are generally smaller, 1-bedroom type units. They're not meant to be the same size as a full family house. And often there's not usually 2 people per bedroom in every house. But they have the required parking, so that's what our bylaw says, and that's what we have to go by.
Okay, that's what you need to go by. Well, and I agree with you, that's what you need to go by. I'm just wondering, you're not concerned about the cars coming out onto Evergreen because you have two roads that are very close. Queen Street, you have now the commercial operation, you have Elm Street. At that point, Evergreen Hill Road narrows down and there's no sidewalk there. Have you any concerns about the problem with those cars backing out? Because they're going to be backing out. They won't be coming out head first. There's no hammerhead turnabouts or anything like that. Whereas if you go down the street, there are some properties where they have complete turnarounds, where they can come out nose first rather than backing into the traffic. So did you not have any concerns about the number of vehicles like backing out in that place and the configuration of the narrowness of the road at that point?
Through the mayor, this is all reviewed by development engineering as well, so they consider the roads. There are setbacks that have to be met from corners to driveways, so it is all based on I think it's the engineering design guidelines, so I don't have any concerns because it has been reviewed by engineering staff.
Okay, and just one last thing. Snow storage and removal. Again, not a lot of space in the front, going to be taken up with vehicles. Does planning staff at all look at where the snow is going to be removed or stored? Because it doesn't look like there's any space there for that to happen.
Through the mayor, we do look at that for commercial developments, anything under site plan control. So the property next door, we looked at that. We don't look at that for private residential developments. The driveways aren't huge, so there's generally not tons of snow that needs to be stored, but they do have side yards as well that could be used.
Yeah, if they want to carry that far. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My line of questioning is going to be somewhat similar to Councillor Black's. I have a real concern with this application, given the density of residential dwelling use that would be within the footprints of these two buildings. I remember having some concern, Mr. Mayor, with the original amendment, which was to allow the two semi-detached buildings on what had previously been a commercial little mini strip mall original design, and now to double that, to go from 4 residential units to 8 residential units, notwithstanding the fact that these are accessory apartments, I think is really, really asking for trouble down the road in terms of density and neighbors and dealing with their neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. So Alicia made reference, as Councillor Black asked her, to the fact that some of the housing in this immediate vicinity is, if you like, more dense housing, and I acknowledge that, particularly with the development to the west along Evergreen and along Queen South, I guess it is. But do staff have a sense of units per square feet, or what the square footage of these 4 units per building would be?
Through the mayor, Councillor Oliver, do you mean square footage for the accessory units or for the entire buildings?
Well, I guess I'm thinking for the entire building, because what I'm trying to wrap my head around is having 4 units, 4 residential units within each of those buildings, regardless of individual sites. So on average, what would be the square footage?
Through the mayor, I don't know the square footage. The owner is here tonight, as well as his agent, so they may be able to answer that, but I have brought up photos for you to look at. So those are each a semi-detached dwelling, and then the basements would be used for the accessory apartments. So they're not excessively large. They're pretty average looking in size.
Okay, thank you. That'll do for now.
Thank you. Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I guess through you too, Alicia. I'm on page 127, Alicia, of our agenda, and it shows the 2 units and the what I think is going to be the paved area in front of the buildings. And it looks to me like it's not going to, am I reading this correct, that the extra parking is going to be created with the impervious area widening out the parking on the front lawn, correct?
Through the mayor, that's correct. They've reduced the front lawn area.
And so is that part of the exemption that you're asking for, to pave more of the front yard, correct? Okay.
Through the mayor, that is correct, yes.
Okay, and I do have some other comments, but I also would like to know, you mentioned in your deputation that they're looking, I know the stormwater problem down there because I've gone there and I've looked at it, and I've also, how do I put it? I know they have a temporary straw bale type